Hello and welcome to Ed's Pinball Mayhem Workbench. Today I'm going to be working on AMI jukebox automatic selector system, and I'm going to be recapping and rebuilding the search unit. But first I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of the system, and hopefully we'll be able to explore this more in future videos, because I got a lot of work to do on this. Right now I have a Continental 1 and a Continental 2, both from different years, different eras. I'll continue talking about them that I'm working on. And so make sure to say hi in chat. I am going to be probably putting my head down and working a lot, but I will try to keep up on some chat. So let's just jump right into it. Hopefully everything can be heard fine. All right. So here we go. I'm up there in the corner, and so I got a few things here. I know you're probably getting a little nervous. Everything's stacked on top of itself. I wanted to show it to you all. This is the selector system, and I'm gonna just go back to one of my things about working on jukeboxes. You have 4 systems, and in order to properly work on a jukebox, it's not a big Rube Goldberg. Get your mind in the correct mindset, you're going to be able to easily tackle it as 4 individual systems. You have the audio system, which is the needle cartridge to the tone arm wire to the amplifier to the speakers. Most of the time the audio system is, they all interact, of course. There's a muting relay or a muting circuit, so that if you can either pull that relay or bypass that, you can actually test that whole system with the rest of the box non-functional. The second system is the cabinet, the cosmetics, the paint, and that's one which is always important. I like to start with that, because then as I rebuild the other systems, I can put it in there. The third system is the mechanism. That's what's actually, I know the tone arm's on the mechanism, but it's actually what picks the record. It's going to find the record that you selected, and it's that you told it you want to select. It's going to put the record on the turntable, play it, and return it safely, and be able to go to a park or a different system. That can actually be tested pretty much outside the rest of the systems. And then the last one, and probably the most complicated and the one that gets everybody, is what I call the credit selection system. And that's what we're talking about today. So this is a actually I do have another part of this. This is this is one that I opted to not rebuild. This is a credit unit out of the same jukebox. It's really crusty. I think this is just a spares. All these wires have been cut and twisted together, and masking tape, that is not acceptable. It's missing a coil over here, a stop coil. So yeah, this can be fixed. It can be brought back to life. For right now, with its condition, the other 2 I'm working on were in much nicer shape, so I choose to replace it with my spare, and this is going to go as spare parts. And here are some coin switches that are really damaged and bad from the same jukebox. So this coin switch talks to this. There's another card, a pricing card in the middle. That's not important right now, but so that's part of the credit selection system. And why they're the same system is because without a credit on, you cannot make a selection, and those systems are all designed to do that. So let me put this down back in my parts bin. So we are going to be focusing on the selection credit system. So I already got the credits rebuilt, but I want to just reference the AMI Continental 2 book, and in here it says there's 3 different types of selection systems for the AMI, starting with the G200 through the the Continental 2 1 and 200 select, and that is the 900 series mechanism. There is 3 different versions. There is what's called manual. I'm going to start with manual. Manual is you have a dial on the front, and you have discs that rotate, and it's just a kind of manual selection. You actually rotate the dial till the number is shown top dead center, and you press a button, and that writes in your selection. So these selection search units are just a couple gears and a button or a couple gears and the thing that displays the dials. That's all the search units are, all the electronics and everything. They're very simple version. Of course, the framework's all the same because they're all compatible. Now, manual wasn't available with all models, like the G200 through through the Continental 2. It was more popular to find manual jukeboxes in Europe, some Italian maids, Ballet AMIs, for instance, than it is to find in America. So America, they're kind of more uncommon, but they definitely have their prestige. Disadvantage is it takes longer to get to your selection if you pick one, and you also can never use any sort of stepper or remote equipment with it. And that's where it was a lower cost option. There's also some different plastics in order to, or keyboard castings, depending on the model, in order to display that number, letter number dial, as opposed to a bunch of buttons. So next one is the automatic, and you have the electric. The electric came out first, and it's actually like a stepper where the keyboard looks different. You have a disc on here, and this keyboard has just a few wires. Now, if you look at this, we have 4 plugs, amp lock coming off it. It just had a few wires, one single plug. Oh, you got a 5th plug over here. Can't see. I'll pick it up and show you later. And then you have the automatic. The automatic actually had a search unit. It did not have a stepper built into it. So the other units, the search unit was a search unit and a stepper. So it would receive it from either a wall box or the keyboard. So the keyboard was essentially a wall box, and the credit unit in the jukebox was the credit unit for your wall box. Kind of makes sense. That was called electric, but automatic is what is primarily found in the K200, Continental 1 and Continental 2 for your electric systems. You will not find for automatic systems, you will not find an electric system in those boxes, and that's where the super hard to find stepper comes into. So this, as per the manual, all versions of the automatic selector are functionally the same. They differ only in physical arrangements of the parts and in the way they are mounted in the phonograph. Operation of the complete automatic selector can be best understood by analysis of the functions of each of its parts. So that's in the, this is an original service manual I found for Continental 2. You will not find a official service manual for Continental 1. There is a parts manual available at Victory Glass. There is a Continental 2 manual, but if you are working on Continental 1, you would want the K service manual and the parts manual. Just to go into that. So this is the, can't see, kind of washed out. So you got the credit systems are a little different too. So I got automatic. You're a little washed out there, so I'm going to just put this book away. It's can't have enough reference material. Keyboard. So this is the keyboard assembly. Doesn't look like much, but here are the keys. The keys depress this, and we'll lock in one at a time. You can in fact lock one of each bank if you want to. That's you got letter numbers or letter numbers. I'd have to didn't look at the machine, forgot. If it's the case that it is you have locked in one of each button bank, when you lock in 2 of these banks, the end of stroke switch is at the end here, much like a score wheel in a jukebox or in a pinball EM. These will detect if 2 of the banks have a button to press. So that's important to keep these switches down here adjusted. And I went through and I adjusted all the switches on this. I did not use any cleaner or products on it yet. And then this will then allow you to, once you write in a selection, it will search for it on the search unit. And when it finds that, it will pulse the relay, pulse this little relay over here, which will then release it. And it will also write in the selection into the pin bank. Now, interesting fact is when you have no credits on the jukebox, the buttons will not lock down because it will essentially be holding that in, and the buttons will just not lock down. So that's kind of unusual that it's energized when you do not have selections as opposed to energized when you do. That's why this fuse is very important to not overfuse and burn out this coil, because tough luck finding one. I was lucky enough that this keyboard was missing this coil. I was lucky enough to have one from rebuilding my Continental 2 about 15 years ago. I bought every spare part I could and bought multiples. I made one keyboard out of 2.5 keyboards, and I was lucky to have a spare. So now I don't have a spare anymore, but I got one for this Continental 1. The only difference I have seen between in the harnesses and such is right here, this plug, the bottom row pins I've seen them on the left 2 spots or the right 2 spots. That's something that if you are putting a bunch of parts together that may not have been, that's something where I would double check that. Now between the K200, Continental 1, and Continental 2, the schematics have changed slightly. I've seen different layouts of resistors in here, but I have just kind of copied what I had on a working machine upstairs, where this one's out of a Continental 2. I'm going to make sure these wires line up with the wiring harness, these pins, and we should be good. The other difference is the Continental 2 offered auto speed by factory option, and it was an option in the accessory catalog from the G200 all the way through Continental 2 if you did not order it with it. But you notice this harness has this extra switch here. There's actually, and I don't have it on any of mine, there's a lever, a little paddle that will depress this on some of these buttons here, and you would be able to put little plates in or screw little pieces in that would allow this to depress to actually change the pricing for only these buttons worth in the bank, so that you can have like the bottom 2 be extended play. So that would be your 33 1/3, which would be, rather than a 2.5 minute song, you could have 5 minutes of music on it. Well, rather than charging a dime per play, you're going to want to charge 15 cents per play, and that's where this little switch comes on. So that's why that switch is not on the K and the Continental 1. Generally, I have not seen that on that keyboard from what I have seen. Now, there's a lot of parts being moved around between the two because they're relatively compatible, but I think that has something to do with the pin layout over here. So I'm going to then put this down, because this is actually good to go. Oh, these 2 wires over here, these 2 wires are actually go to the cancel button, the white button on the way left hand side of the keyboard, and that's a micro switch that's screwed to. You have to have that installed before you install the keyboard assembly. This comes out with 2 screws. You take these screws off on the bottom, and if you notice, there's a keyhole. That screw should be a step screw or loose. You just slide it up, you slide it down and you pop it out, and then you can take this out. There is going to be 4 plugs. They are a 9 cap. So this one is a cap. We're going to call that a cap because it's like a ball cap where it's open on the inside. And then you got the plug, which plugs into the cap. That's solid plastic. So these are amp lock. These are, don't ever throw these connectors out. They're hard to get. The pins are available. There's a limited quantity at Victory Glass. You can buy replacement pins if you need them. But the caps and the plugs are hard to get. There's a 12 cap, a 12 plug, a 9 cap, and a 9 plug. And I'm going to eventually map that out for purpose of the stepper. So let me set this down out of the way so I don't roll over it, because that's good to go in the jukebox when it comes back. All right, next part is the search unit. That's over here. That's what we're going to be working on today. And then on the left, I have an optional stepper. So these units, because they're such a compact cabinet, required a stepper that's a little different. So it's a 2-part stepper, and that's very common. There's a couple common mistakes with the stepper. So I've seen it very often that people will say, "Oh, I got 1 part, either this part or that part," and they say, "I got the stepper for it." Or they'll think they have the whole search unit, say that's the stepper for a Continental 2. No, this is the relay part, and this is the actual stepper part. So you need both of these, and they need to be the same version, because AMI had their wall boxes talk a little bit differently. They actually, the letter number combo was different than the industry standard. The industry standard was basically Seeburg 200 Select when it came out with a 3WA on up, and Wurlitzer Rockola at that point, which is mid 50s. Once they got rid of the 3W100 Select pin banks and they went to the Tonomat, they changed their numbering, and that's what it stuck with. The 160 then became 200. So that's what it stuck with for the industry standards. So that's why in the book you'll see there's 2 versions of the stepper for AMI and for other jukeboxes. Other jukeboxes pretty much means if you want to put an AMI in a location that has Seeburg wall boxes, all purchased wired and everything, you would buy the Seeburg compatible stepper and just disconnect 3 wires and reconnect, and you're ready to rock and roll, literally. So how to tell what you have. There's actually in the relay there is a part here. I'm going to do a more in-depth article on that. That's different. It's like it's a rectifier versus a diode versus a resistor. On the back we have CCA and CCB. That means this box here is good for the CCA or CCB relay. A, B, C, and D are the other version. And I don't have my notes handy, so I'm not going to tell you what that is. A is A or B. So A, B, C, D. So C, D. This is a CCC. So A, B is AMI, and A would be 200 select, B would be 100 select. Now a 200 select is compatible with 100 select box. It just has extra stuff in it. C and D. C is the Seaberg fit or other jukebox, and D is the other jukebox. So C is 200 selects, D is 100. So these two boxes will plug together, and you have all these cables on here providing power for the setup, and then you have to have the keyboard plug into this, and then this plug into the search unit, and these two plugs have to plug in. So there's a lot of wiring to inspect and go through, and these are not ready to plug in because there's an extra wire that may or may not be added. So I'm going to be validating everything on the steppers before I plug them in. Plus these 5 caps are got to be replaced. See if there are any caps on this side. There are no capacitors on this side. So these just need the wiring validated and checked and cleaned, and the search unit disc cleaned, and then these would be good to go. And then the relay boxes need to be documented, and they need to be recapped. So I'm going to set these down and go to the work we're actually doing today. Now that I got some desk space. Oh, we're all right there. Okay, this is a search unit, and I not only have one, but I have two. There was a while that the Continental 1s and 2s were made in Mexico, and this one on the left says Mexico on it. So that's a Mexican-made box, or it's from a Mexican-made box. Things I can tell that are different. Now these are both for the same machine, but things that I can tell that are different on these two, being the manufacturer. Well, I'm not sure about that capacitor, if that's been replaced by somebody or not. It looks like it's been replaced. The capacitors are a different color. That's not really that important. The wire on the US made one is a little thinner. The wire on the Mexico one is a little bit thicker jacketing on there. A little bit of inconsistencies. I got a super thin wires and thicker wires here as compared. But the other thing I really noticed was the Mexico one does not have the 3-pin plug to power the stepper. And that I thought was interesting, but then upon further inspection, the Mexico one also does not have this relay blade here, and I traced these two wires coming back here, the orange and the blue, and they are two wires that go to the stepper. So from what I'm guessing is we got the 3 wires from left to right is green with a yellow stripe. Looks like a light blue and an orange, and the light blue is the front blade on this relay, and the orange is the back blade. So if you're missing it, you would have to just figure out where the green with the yellow stripe goes. If we run into that, I'll let you know. I'm sure that's probably power, and I bet you this is ground or something causing the stepper to not receive when this is working, so they're not both working at the same time, because AMI did have a only wants one going at a time, because otherwise you're going to have a problem. So that's the extra blade. Now, a lot of these times, I see a lot of people, hey, I'm looking for this specific relay or this specific part for a Wurlitzer or jukebox Seaberg. The parts are very much the same, though. If you could find like a parts box. So if I found a parts of a AMI that weren't this exact coil from this box, but maybe the contact blades were the same, or maybe the coil was the same, you can actually swap out just that part. It just takes a little bit more work. And the other thing, looking at this, you're like, well, did someone just take it out? I'm like, well, I can see no tooling marks from there being a blade there. I don't see any additional wires cut off. So in my opinion, this is the way it was built back factory. So that's just my opinion. So I guess the things I need to do today is check to make sure these motors work. I need to clean the plates here. There's an adjustment procedure we'll have to do when we're all said and done to make sure these adjust right. The wipers need to be replaced on all these, and the capacitors need to be replaced. That's where we're going to start replacing the capacitors. That's got to be done. Now, quick note, and I had an argument online when I did my first one with somebody on this. The capacitors in here are going to be rated for like 650 volts. You don't need 650 volts in here. You look at all the voltages coming in and out, and it's not 650 volts. The reason why these 5 caps are 650 volts is because AMI was building amplifiers that are tube-based. So they had these capacitors around. They're not going to just say, well, it's the same value. It's a 0.1 microfarad that we're using everywhere else. Let's just buy some slightly cheaper ones for in the search units when they were keeping a flexible. So I checked with a couple other people in the industry, and they agree with me, but I've always rebuilt these with slightly lower voltages and never had a single problem, because the most we're dealing with here is there's about 26 to 30 volts AC that powers this motor. That's it. That's all the AC does on this unit, is they power the motor and they light the lights through one of these resistors for the credit lights. And then the other thing they do is you got about 24 to 30 volts DC that powers the solenoids, the coils, and the mechanisms. So that's all we're dealing with. So a capacitor capable of 150 volts, more than fine. 100 volts is where I wouldn't go below that, because I always like to be double what we're working with. But just keep in mind that as far as space goes, we can be a little bit safer. And technology has reduced a lot. maybe Saturday morning spectacular. So manuals, parts. Now I am working on a kit at Victory Glass to have all the caps you need for the search unit, and there is one cap up in the switch box. And here's an example of some of those pins, those crimp pins for the connectors, because I will be replacing those. That's the last thing I do. I'm going to do the inspection of the wires and map it out. Now I'm not going to do the search unit on this one, because this disc is so worn off. It's pretty nasty. It's actually, someone built this up with copper and solder. So I have new discs coming. It's going to be a lot of work to swap that out. But I ordered some new discs, and not looking forward to it big time, but I am going to take these off and do it right, because this is a keeper machine for me. This one is I'm doing for somebody else, and this one is actually in better shape except for the wipers, which I picked up some of those. Once again, Victory Glass has those, so those will be on the side. That's the last thing I'm going to do. And set those over here because I don't need them. And let's rock and roll with these cap replacements. So I got the caps. I'll probably replace them the same cap on each. It looks like this top one is a .0047. Now this plastic cap up here, that's a film cap. This is probably the same one, but I'm going to put a new one on. I like to use the poly films for that area. .047, nope. That's not what I need. 0.1, we're going to be using a few of those. And I'm just going to get this bin. Let's see this bin here. So this is .0047 right here. Yep. And you can see how much smaller that cap is. And yeah, I'm just going to work my way down and replace these caps, because this is a job I have not been looking forward to. How you doing? How are you doing over there, CW Graham? Keeping yourself busy? Staying warm over in another cold state? One thing to actually look for when working on any old equipment, I always think what caused it to what caused it to go to pasture? And sometimes you find a really nice condition machine, and it's like, hey, you know, what's the deal with that? Why did it go to pasture? Why is it being taken out of service back in the day? And I actually had a joust and now a jukebox switch box for one of these boxes that wow, that's interesting. That you see here, this whole tab is busted clean off. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of cleanup here. This is what we call a mess. That was a complete solder joint was missed, so that's always that's always something to keep in mind, that maybe they missed something back in factory. I'm going to untangle this mess, because from what I'm seeing here, it looks like somebody broke the tab off the relay, which is fine, but now we have just a big mess. So especially in the parts you're removing, don't be afraid to cut them. But I like to, my golden rule of working on anything is treat it as if it's irreplaceable. Yeah. Yeah, the Victory Glass logo is more or less designed to be a Art Deco remnant. Okay, so what do we got here? It's I may have just opened up a little can of worms. It looks like the coil wire is actually soldered off of the pin. So I am going to, now this is where having bench power supplies is very helpful. I'm going to try to do my best job to get a good mechanical connection on everything. Where'd that go? There we go. So yeah, there's a chunk of stranded wire in there, and for making a connection like this, I understand you have to make a stranded wire connection or a wire connection, but I prefer to not do stranded if I can. So this relay is a very important relay. It's called the Sprague relay. I'm trying to keep that on the screen there, so sorry guys. Where when this is turning, this has to lock into a tooth in order to fully it'll stop, it'll lock in, and that locking in will stop the gears when it hits the exact right spot, which is what we'll have to be setting up the wipers for later, and we'll make the contact to right in, and also you know, that's what erases the buttons on the button panel, that relay we were talking about, and actually writes in the selection into the pin bank. So yeah, this is kind of an important connection, and people are emailing me and nothing important. Okay, so yeah, if you're out there and you're trying to get a hold of me, come on chat. So what I'm going to do is, because the tab from the solenoid is here, and I do not like that at all. These wires are twisted. I like to clean it up the best I can. Yeah, my techniques may not be the best, as I kind of explained in the point-to-point wiring video. There is sometimes, you know, there's a lot of discussion on the best way to do things. But what I want to do is, this was just soldered to a blob that was soldered there, and let me just do a quick compare of the two coils or capacitors before and after. That can go into the garbage bin. Now, just one thing I'm going to point out, and I'm going to say this every video, and I'm going to say it multiple times. Whenever putting a capacitor in, or any component, make sure you put it in a way that you can read it. And so I'm going to make sure this reading, it's a little hard to read, but 472K. This is a 630 volt, but I'm going to make sure I have a little bit of a tail, because I like to be able to, if I need to flex it out of the way, be able to do that. So, but I'm going to do something a little different here because of that damage. Because rather than having a stranded wire going back, I would rather have a solid wire. So I'm going to actually come around the bottom side of that terminal to get a mechanical connection. And now you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to try to, I know it's not a good idea, but I'm going to try to adjust this just to get a little bit closer, just so you can see what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get that through that other loop, and I'm just going to simply cut it with my side cuts, my flush cuts. These are great. Just put the picture on the website this morning. I decided drinking my morning coffee, do a little bit of website work. So there we go. So now I'm going to get a nice mechanical connection. You want a mechanical connection first, the best mechanical connection you can get, and then follow up with solder. So before I do anything to the other side, I'm just going to, of course I didn't think about where I'm working. I'm just gonna grab my other iron. Now I have a desoldering iron on my bench, which is one of my best. It's not required. You can do this job with other stuff, but it's I absolutely love having that. Okay, so now that I got this going back, I can cut this wire. Make sure I get the tail piece out. I'm going to bend this down, and that will be soldered to the wire coming from the coil that was previously broken off. Now these wires do need to be reattached, and I'm just going to work those, straighten this out a little bit, because I would prefer at least one of these two wires to still go through that hole in the bottom of the coil, the rivet. And that's going to give me the best physical connection. What's the best way to go around this post? And I'll solder it up, and then I'm going to test it right away. Because if it's not good, I need to make a note and start shopping for a replacement coil. Either in my parts bin, as I said, there might be a very similar coil somewhere. And now, I gotta solder that. So before I bend that out of the way, I am going to try to see if this standard iron does it. My Heiko 907. I love these things. I actually pick them up used whenever I can. They stopped making them, and that kind of disappointed me. But my friend turned me on to solder size. The solder I'm using is a little bit thinner than I'm going to get next time. So, okay, soldered that side on. So now I'm making a good connection to the rivet. So I have a solid connection. And I'm also making a good connection to the wires, because I got a good physical connection there. This one wire is not going through the rivet, but it's going to be just fine. And the good news is the way I ran that lead through the bottom, if I ever have to replace that, I could just cut it off, wrap it around so it gives a good physical connection. Now I shouldn't have to replace it for a while. This is a film capacitor, so it's not one that that's going to burn out. There we go. Let me just verify that that's going to the same spot as the other one. It says center blade there. Yep. All right. So we are soldered in. And just because I want to test that coil, I will grab my power supply. On the left, I have it. I'll just go to 24 volts DC. Show you. When testing, don't go overboard, don't lock things on. Just that's you don't want to burn anything out when testing, because a lot of these are not duty rated for constant use. But another that's the easiest way. Just do a quick test and you're good to go. So I just want to point out these are what they call plastic. Ooh, yeah, this wire here is broken off. Plastic coated. They're more like a film cap. They're non-polar, so it doesn't matter which way you put them. You look at this like, yeah, it's good, it's fine. It's not an electrolytic. Why replace it? You should always replace these. The plastic can crack, moisture can get in there, and they can damage. So there is. I'm going to replace the same one over here and do the same thing. Now this one's going to be maybe a little easier. We'll see. At least with the tab not busted off. I realized once I moved the screen in, you can't see what I'm doing there. I think it's kind of nice to be doing two at the same time because then I double up the work. So I save time. Ooh, that just fell off. So all right, I'm gonna pull all the solder off this tab. I like to. Yep, and you see here, there's a chunk of an old wire, and there's no reason to leave that. I don't like doing that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess there's times when I have had to leave a chunk of wire in a spot it's hard to get to, but I mean, generally speaking, I don't see a good reason to do that. This box has a history of surprises for me that this came from, so I am going to double check the other work that's been done to it around the board, just because I don't want any problems. So I just making sure I have a good physical connection with both of these again, because yeah, you can solder stuff and make it work, but if you have physical connection, it's going to be much better. So once again, I'm going to throw this cap in. Now this one's just going to go through the top, so I'm just going to bend it, cut her off. Nice 90-degree bend. The one with more wires is definitely going to be harder to get started, so I'm going to start that one first. Just try to bend these wires up. I try to make my work look clean. I always want to take pride in what you do. Good, clean work makes it easier to troubleshoot and work on later. Try not to overbend wires or bend stuff back and forth. We don't need to weaken anything. We just need to do enough to get a good physical connection. Something so that this isn't wiggling around when I solder it in. You get a good joint. Now, another thing to point out: I don't want the components to be touching the coils. Coils can get hot, components can get hot. No need to short. Hey there, Barricade. Been a while. How you doing? I just we're planning on working on this on my bench, and decided that this is something I think would be useful for people working on AMIs. It's also good for just point-to-point working. I'm probably just going to get these caps replaced today, but wanted to give a kind of an overview of the AMI jukebox system. There we go. There. Alright, one cap down. Now this cap is probably good. I don't know. Throw it in my garbage bin. Next, I got this interesting pack of caps. Since this one's on the left, I'm going to move the camera again. I know you guys, you're not supposed to do that, but guess what? We're going to break the rules today. Breaking the law, breaking the law. Okay. So I have found the easiest way, and here's the cool part, is our capacitors are going to be a fraction of the size. Yeah, you can try. You can heckle me all you want, Chris, but I can just ignore you too. So, all right. These, you can actually take 2 screws off the bottom, pull this out, and this is going to be. It's really easy to replace these because you can get to them pretty easily and everything. So I'm going to point out this is an electrolytic cap. The rest of them are film. You can see the negative is marked by the line here, and the positive, or the foil side, and the positive is marked there. You can see it's blowing through on this one. This one's, the center is blowing out. These are all junk. This one is a paper with wax-filled film or some sort of poly caps. These two, I mean, you can replace them with little ones like the other one I took out up here. I'm going to replace them with the good stuff that I like to use. Also note, we got a wire broken off. I will have to make sure I get that put back on in the right spot. So always removing this. If I wouldn't have taken this out and looked at it, I probably wouldn't have seen that broken wire, and that would have been a great opportunity to, a great missed opportunity. So I'm pretty sure that wire goes up here. And I think I've even done it in the past where I've just cut all these off and put them on the back side because we'll see the size of the capacitors. So these are, I'm going to take the caps out. We're going to need, these are these electrolytic caps. Now, interesting point. This is a 100 microfarad capacitor, and it is, that's what it's spec for. Always put a bigger cap in. I put 120. Now this cap is important. That's what sends the pulse. And by sending that pulse, a lot of these get gummed up and stuck, and they need a little bit more push per se. So this is kind of discharging this cap to give that nice push to send all the coils down the way. And sometimes people disconnect the play meter and they disconnect certain things to actually make it give more power. But I'm putting 120 microfarad in, but 120, 130 is what's recommended to replace the 100 microfarad cap. So then we got, I know there's 2 of these are 0.1s. That's this bad boy, and that's going to be 0.1 times 2. So because I'm doing 2, I'm going to take those out. Those are my 0.1s. And then the last one I need is going to be 0.047. That's a smaller one. So you can actually see physical size is a little different, a little smaller. Cap. So this is my 0.047s. I'm going to put those off to the left. And yeah, let's start replacing these. I'm just going to do a nice clean job and pull out a whole bunch of solder. Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I've been working on a lot of stuff in the garage, woodworking. Mechanisms are very hard to video, but I do like to kind of pop in occasionally, and you know, I've been wanting to share this information, and I've also been procrastinating doing this job because it's a lot of cleaning after I get this done. So this is going to be a little bit of a trick. So what I can do, and it's really good. Now, if I did not have a second one here, I would just take pictures, but it's a really good thing that I can look at that, but I would just take pictures. Now, I'm going to know that the positive is facing up. I'm going to just replace one at a time. It's not going to take long, but I'm having trouble getting that old solder out. That's where I'm going to add new solder in. I actually can get behind this. Try to loosen her up a little bit. What arcades and pins have you been working on, Barricade? Cool. That's out. All right, next. Get the bottom side. As I said, I like to really clean things up when I'm taking it out. I don't want to. I mean, yeah, you could realistically you could cut these out and just throw the resistors on the back or the capacitors across this back because they are a fraction of the size. that's, you know, that's one way to do it. If I can remove everything, I will. Put them back on the front side. I mean, there's a... Okay, so when desoldering with a desoldering iron, I find it's best to pull out as much solder as you can, and then as it's cooling, I'm just moving the part a little bit. I'm not bending the wire, I'm moving it on the solder point. What that's going to do is make sure that as it cools, there's a little solder between this wire and the terminal. Ooh, and that's why we wear glasses. It will then just, that solder won't set. So that's much like doing a cold solder joint when you move. So this 150 is 100 microfarad 50 DC. That's why I said you don't need 630 volts. So garbage. Now this is a replacement. Uh-oh. This is the right one, but it's not marked. I think this thin line, this is an aluminum replacement. Capacitor. I think this divot is the negative point, but I didn't realize that this was not marked as easily. I think it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of odd. So I'm going to have to quickly look that up. Robotron Wildcard Road Kings. Nice. Oh, my desoldering iron. I have a Heiko 470, and that's a good. I've had this thing for, oh man, easily 10 years. To side. Okay. Axial. AXI. Okay, does anybody know offhand? Okay, negative, plus side. Okay, so the plus side is the side with the indented band and plus sides indicated positive leads. All right, so there is a plus side kind of on the right, but it's not very close to that. It also says plus 105 on it. So this is the indented sign is the positive side, and my cap I just pulled off, the positive side was up, so that's going to go up. Now this is what's called axial. So this is a means the wires comes out of both sides. So another thing to do before I put that in place is I'm going to just take off this wire for this 0.047, just because it's easy to access right now before I start soldering in. That's where you have to have a little bit of a memory of what you're doing. And because I already pulled the solder out, I'm just going to put a little solder on the wire for that capacitor, and that's going to allow me to conduct the heat. And I could always just, now that I know exactly which wire it is on this, cut a little chunk out. Hit myself again. There. All right. So now, throw that in there so I can read it. Nice bend up. Nice bend down. Throw it in. And cut it off. Bend over. Same here. A nice physical connection. And there. There. Okay, so that's physically in. I can go ahead and solder the top one. I'm not going to solder the bottom though, because I got another wire going to that lead, that terminal. That is this next one, 0.047. All right, give me 1 second, guys. Gotta just check something. Okay, just making sure. All right, back to rock and rolling. All right, so this is 0.047, and this is 600 volts. Yeah, I like, the other thing is you can get the axle capacitors are a little harder to find. They're a little bit more expensive, but they work a lot better. Another thing when using a desoldering thing, one thing I need to get better at doing is when you're done desoldering, don't just pull it off the work and then just let go of the trigger. Hold it for a little while longer. What that's going to do is make sure you clean the gun out. So there we go. That one's, now these have a line, but these are non-directional, so that's 0.047. That is the physical size difference here, and that's why I'm not really concerned about fitting everything in nice and flat on this side of the board. I did that to myself. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom here. Nice fold over. Nice tight crimp. Okay, solder away. Placing caps on something like this is not really too bad of a job. I mean, getting set up, having the tools is a big part of it. Oh, I was saying about solder earlier. A friend of mine pointed out using thicker solder. He likes doing that for saving time. Because my solder I'm using is Kester 0.031, and he uses 0.4. And I did try some of that, and yeah, he's right. It is a little nicer. I think the only reason I like the 0.031 is I was doing a lot of board level work at the time. Okay, let that cool. Let me check it. Solder the bottom. Now note that these connections do have some stuff on the back side too, so it is important to get side of the wire and the terminal really good. Wires that are on here. Alright. 2 down. 2 to go. Or 3 down. 3 down, 2 to go. This just kind of goes with the if you want anything to work long term, I always replace all the electrolytic caps and then review other caps that need to be replaced. That's just me. I know a lot of times you'll see reuse circuit in like arcade PCBs. Well, it's working fine, so why change it? Well, I want it to be working fine now. I want to protect my components. I want it to still be working fine in 2-3 years. So I always replace the caps, electrolytics for sure. I inspect all the other components, check for broken legs. Yeah, I'm just kind of moving that around a little bit so that as it cools, it breaks loose. Now, yeah, you can have the argument, what about other components that you can move around that are going to break loose? Well, you're going to be resoldering that piece back in. So, oh, goody, that yellow wire broke off too now. Yeah, if one wire breaks off, probably got some more damage. So, luckily, that's a good thing about streaming. if you forget where wire came from, you can always check the playback. But that's where taking pictures before you start is important. Get that fit in there nice and tight. Let's see if I can get that chunk of that wire that broke off out of there. There we go. I'm probably going to put that wires on last because why fight them? Why fight their location if I am why fight their location when I'm working? Because I still got one more cap to replace. I'll just take that off and I'll just solder everything up last. Come on, melt. Another thing to keep in mind with these soldering irons is eventually this will start having more problems pulling the solder out. I will have to clean the tool. Better technique saves that. Of course, when you're working on older stuff, you have a tendency for the old rosin and everything to just congeal it up and cause problems. Don't want to be hitting the throat again by flying solder. And this one is also the same microfarad as the one I just pulled out. There is another cap that I'm going to include in my kit when I make it. It's going to be the Continental 2, not the Continental 1 for some reason, had an electrolytic cap up in the switch box. And that's to I think it's to arc suppress up there or to give a little bit more power because the mechanism, maybe they discovered a issue with the system and decided to make it a little bit better. So that cap's going to be included as optional. So it's going to be kind of like the mechanism supplement kit, I think is what we talked about calling it. Just the parts you're going to need. A little short write-up of what goes where. Come on. There we go. Just need to get this little piece of wire out. There we go. Alright. Last one on this board. Then I can start putting it all back together. Once again, fold that over and up. Fold that across. And cut it off. I'm going to clamp her down. Tails are flying everywhere when you're working on this stuff. So keep that in mind when you're done. You don't want it sticking to the inside of the units. Trying to see if I can get this remainder of this wire out before I do any soldering. Kind of your flush cutters can be everything. Okay, so I'm going to solder the bottom of this up. And try to solder the bottom of this up. Put the board in, then put the wires on top, and then this one will be done. Well, this entire thing's not done. This is just the recapping part of it. I will and should test the Sprague relay before I call this one good. I already tested the AC motor by providing, because I got a AC power supply in front of me, so I gave it some 30 volts AC or 25. I always go lower. I think I gave it like 25, and I just made sure that it spun little noisy, so I'll use that power supply later just to work some oil in there, make sure it's all good. So this top is slotted and the bottom one is solid. Or sorry, the top is slotted, the bottom one is just a straight up hole. There we go. Now, unexpected. The wires that broke off. Let's get those taken care of. Hey, CNK YouTube, how you? Doing good. I'm working on a selector assembly for a AMI Continental 1 and 2. And now, here's the problem. I'm just going to verify that these two wires go to the right spot, because they should not be broken off. We are recapping those, and then the next step is going to be, throw these over here in the garbage bin. The next step is going to be to clean the search units and the contacts. So we have two wires that are suspect. So the one that goes here is yellow and goes back into the harness. This one is here. Yellow goes back that way somewhere. And then this one is cloth, and it's going to the lower blade. This one is orange going lower blade. Okay, so yeah, these are the right order. I'm going to get these soldered in place next. It's kind of hard to tell CNK, but oops, these were, I started off a little bit more zoomed out, but I wanted people to see what I was working on. But these search units for Continental 1 and 2 jukebox, actually I'm working on 2 jukeboxes right now, and it's one of those where it's easier to work on 2 of the same thing or similar thing at a time. Think about the savings, ordering parts and everything. So I ordered everything together. Actually, these are the units that go on the front of the jukebox, or they're inside the jukebox on the front of the mechanism, that receive the button presses from the keyboard and are responsible for physically writing it into the pin bank on the back of the mechanism. So it's electromechanical marvel here. I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with that at all. It's not, the wires are not taking any of the solder, so I'm going to have to put a little flux on there. I mean, it's holding in place. It looks like it is, but it's not actually doing anything. Yeah, the AMIs did things a little differently, and they had a lot of variants or options. Alright, that's a little better. So what I did is I'm using my desoldering iron to solder this on, and there's one reason for that, and that's because the desoldering iron is much higher wattage. So it's going to provide a little bit more heat, help that flux I just put on there flow in. I'm just going to use it to make all these look a little nicer. Because it's a higher heat, it's actually going to heat everything. There we go. Alright, so this is recapped. Now I gotta do the same thing to this one. Okay, fun stuff. All right, I have to be done. I'm going to be done at about noon, or we'll see how long this one takes. Now that the hard work is done, figured it out. So, got my caps over here off to the right. And this is my little one. Oh wow, that capacitor is just, you could see it's about to burst or out the end. It's corroding. Ugh. All right. I always like the looks of them, and that's what got me started into jukes. It's already partially desoldered. All right. That's one thing that really kind of got me started in the AMIs, at least. I had a jukebox. I don't know. Wow. That's weird. Okay, I'm not going to go too far. It looks like somebody was working on this at one point, and actually those two were just poked through and not really soldered. I'm a little weird. That's so yeah, I like the AMI Continental too, really a lot. I had a Rockola 444, which had some electronics problems, and I was able to work through all the electrical issues, you know, some ICs and search units. It's kind of made me feel good, and that was my first juke. Wow, this one's coming apart a lot easier than the other one. And I didn't get myself in the face. Okay. Remember, the positive is up. Let's just verify. Yep, positive is up on that one, and the bead is the positive. And of course, it's a good thing I did, because that kind of is how I got into the job I have now. All right, so this next one can come right out too. So yeah, the AMI Continental was, I sold my jukebox, I sold the pinball machine, the Terminator 2, I sold my jukebox, and I took all the money, and it took me a year to find all the pieces I need, because my Continental 2 was missing more than your average project, but it was the only way I could get one in a reasonable price. And spent a lot of time rebuilding that box, but I learned a lot. I also learned a lot about the parts. I learned a lot of nice people too. And it's kind of, it scratches the itch for, you know, neat, you know, the collectible side of things. So I'm going to throw this small one in here too without burning myself. Because now if I screw anything up, I got a whole nother search unit to reference. But yeah, so I'm kind of, then I never intended to work in the industry. I never intended to have a whole bunch of jukeboxes, but now that I do, I'm learning more and more about things I never knew existed, and about how absolutely awesome they are. And that allows me to yeah, collect more stuff. And as I learn, I'm trying to pass on what I learned with you guys. Now this is, AMIs have scared a lot of people off with being quote-unquote complicated machines to work on. And I'm trying to squash some of those. And once again, good physical contact. The other thing I'm just pointing out is I am trying to make sure these are readable from the front side without desoldering or twisting them. Last thing you want to do is someone to see if you did your work right try to twist the lead or something, and then end up ripping your board or ripping your capacitor right off. I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing here, but I got to get this soldered. Keep moving on. All right. Everybody needs a tilt-a-whirl car. I mean, Thunder Road. No, I don't need a tilt-a-whirl. But yes, if I ever found a car for the right price, even if it's preferably something that I could just paint up and put outside, I definitely would. There's a guy over in Minnesota that had some for sale, but they were trash. It wasn't even worth spending time putting a coat of paint on it. And there we go. See? Wires break off all the time. Yeah. Unfortunately, with these silver aluminum caps I got, they're not marked very well, so I ended up just doing a quick search, and they kind of have the crimp bead, and that's the positive side. I ended up having to search that up and figure that out. But the rest of this is it's going pretty well. Okay. Yeah, somebody worked on this before. They either cut the caps or they just didn't do a very good job soldering these back in. There's just a bunch of nasty solder here. I guess the good news for me is it's coming apart easy. That cap just broke right off. Look at that. Just broke right off. So that's one reason why I never want to trust other people's work. I don't want to trust anything like this. I'm just gonna tackle it from scratch. I trust my work. Yeah, these are barely held on, and this one's going to be fun to take off. I mean, I guess I'm not going to say don't trust anybody else's work, but inspect it. Don't just automatically assume that it looks like someone's worked in there and replaced stuff and it's good. It's always worth checking. I had a lot of the contacts on one of these two boxes looked like they were repaired properly, but then once I dug in deeper, seeing the masking tape and everything, twisted wires, is like every joint was just worth taking apart and inspecting, and I'm glad I did. I saved myself a lot of work down the road, and that's the big thing. Is you want to just save yourself. If you're doing all the work to restore the cabinet and do all the physical stuff and make it look great, why half it? Why not? Why put yourself in a position where you are going to get it all said and done, and then something could be a poor connection, and you're not going to know why, and you'll be sitting there. So, man, I wish when I had that wiring harness sitting on my bench, I would have inspected every previous repair. And I have seen some where I've taken the time to pull apart some tape and stuff, and be like, oh, it's a good repair. I'll just put some fresh tape on there, or a fresh way of protecting it. But that's not always the case, and save yourself the trouble of finding out the problem is wrong. You have a problem, and just take the time to inspect it. These are new caps. I'm not sure what you're asking, CNK. I ordered these new. They're not from caps from Just Radios. No, if that's a website, I do not. These are, I think these are all Illinois caps I'm using. But I order them from one of the large online resellers. There. Alright, now let's solder this all up and call her. Of course, I wasn't planning on doing the steppers until recently, and so I ordered all the caps for this, and I also got to shoot the bear. No reference, Bearcade. I got to shoot the bear I'm going to be recapping, so I ordered the caps for that and this together. And now I got to see if I happen to order enough caps for that, for the steppers, but I may have to order caps for those. Once again, I'm not powering anything up until I get all the caps replaced. It's just smart. So I know I got to resolder the top, but because I'm not doing anything else to the bottom, I think it's just going to be easy enough that I just put this panel back in place. Always start all screws loosely. Make sure they catch thread if you have to backwards. Yeah, I try not to use electrical tape. It doesn't stick. But if you have a nice joint in the middle of a wire, I don't know what your options really are. They are new caps now. I just installed. These are the original caps. So somebody, but the way they came off when I was desoldering them, somebody had desoldered them and pulled them back for some reason. So no, these are old caps that I'm replacing. Okay. Now this thing has all new caps in it. But yeah, capacitors cause the most issues. Yeah, capacitors cause more bad caps, out of spec caps cause a lot of issues. Resistors are another one worth checking in a high voltage application, especially tube amps. Sockets, connectors. There we go. All right. So I got all new capacitors in there. You can, if you can visualize this big hump that was all those bigger old ones, I got the new correct one over here. And other than inspecting some wire, because here, kind of like what C&K is saying with the tape. I hate using tape, so I pulled some tape off and I found two nice joints here. So I'm probably, my best bet actually might be just to pull the pin out of the pull the pin out of the connector and just throw some heat shrink over it, because it looks like they did a decent job. But all these spots of tape are going to get pulled off. I'm going to verify everything is, there's no mice chewing spots, and then I'm going to redo where this electrical tape is. I'm going to go back with some lacing, some wax lacing, and check everything. There's a couple pins that are bent in the ends here. Those are going to get replaced too, or pulled out straight, and everything's going to get cleaned. That's what has to happen to this one. But this one right now, as far as soldering, is good until I get those new search unit boards. That's going to be a put my head down and focus kind of task. And yeah, this should be bundled up to here, so I will wax wrap this like I did some other parts. But for right now, I just need to inspect and replace and repair the connectors. Maybe cap on. Oh yeah, I started it when doing some other repairs, and I think it was like Aircraft Spruce Supply got 500 yards for like 10 bucks, 20 bucks, something like that a while ago. So don't quote me on price. It's worth the time. I think I have a video out there on doing it, and I think I linked some of the products, or at least give you the part numbers. I'm not sure, but it's a nice way to finish up a project without doing zip ties everywhere. Zip ties can cut into wires. That's why they're not used on airplanes. So that's where I really like to use it whenever I can. The next step that has to happen to this is, I was going to test this relay. This is the there's that one. Let me test them both again. Make sure we're all good. All right, so those relays work. That's great. And so the next step on this one is to clean and adjust the search discs. And I'm going to there's a little bit of work to do in here. There's a nut that's off. Just trying to see if the best way to get in here. Ow. Cut my finger 2 weeks ago and it's still not 100% healed. Nice deep cut. No, I'm not an aircraft tech. I just was looking for wax string, or the wax lacing, and that's where I found it, was an Aircraft Supply. Yeah, I'm not that fancy. All right, so this. Yeah, those were a little bit tight. So yeah, these discs are going to get cleaned up, and those little wipers are completely shot, and that's where the replacements come in. Where are those? I have them over here. Oh, here they are. Here's new replacement wipers. That's my next task. And then when I get that all done, get the plate on top, I will have to align this. So that kind of takes me to a good stopping point for today. This is much like, this is much like working on steppers. And what I do is, I'm just going to say, there's a lot of difference of opinion, and in my opinion is not going to be changed, because I've been doing it for 20 years and I've not had a problem with it. So I used to use a Superloops silicone grease. I now have some at Victory Glass. We developed some grease that has deoxit in it that is not going to break down. The deoxit will work underneath corrosion and also protect. But I believe any of these wipers, any steppers, anything like that, needs to have just a very, very thin amount. Not much, just a thin amount of grease on there, and it will allow it to conduct through. It'll allow it to conduct, but it'll also keep it from wiping off the contacts and doing damage. The other one here, I have to replace both of these circuit boards because they are worn through the copper, and that's a problem. And this one, you can see these ends are just falling right off because they're worn through where they make the contact. So that one's done. So I'm going to inspect and replace all those if they need it. But first thing I got to do is clean that. Well, I'm going to do that is just with a little alcohol rag, and if I need to do it's just a little bit of something a little bit more abrasive, like a Scotch-Brite. I will, but I start with alcohol, clean that off. This nut needs to be tightened. I don't know why it's loose, but I have a feeling that's going to be a little bit of a trick. And then I'll time it, put it back together, and I'll make sure I lubricate all these points. What I like to use, these are nyliners, so I'll clean those up, and hopefully I don't have to. Oh, that's brass. That's brass. So I'll clean this up, and I'll put a little bit of Tri-Flow, little drippers, so I don't have to spray it in. I don't want to get it all where, just a few drips here and there. and make sure that everything is working and moving smoothly, allowing the motor to work. But that's the next step, and the last thing is I'm going to hit all the contacts in here with a contact treatment and make sure all the relays are fully activating and wiping the blades. But you know, I've never I never got a fiberglass pen yet. I know I've seen fiberglass brushes, but I'll start with alcohol and go from there. But I always like greasing my discs. I had a problem with when I did this jukebox first time, the credit unit. I showed you that earlier. Every once in a while, because I have mine on coins, it would just hit a dead spot where it would arc too much, get dirty. I get in there with an eraser and I clean it. I just got sick of doing that every 6 months, and I use it every weekend, Saturday and Sunday morning, when we're eating and making breakfast. So I threw some grease on there, very little bit. I mean, dip your finger in just a little bit, and I've had that problem since. And my big ball bowler, same thing. I rebuilt all the steppers and I treated everything. I know the argument is the grease collects dust and the grease will harden. Well, that's why you use a super glue, Teflon infused silicone grease. It doesn't harden. This stuff is even better. The Victory Glass contact wiper disc grease, because it has a little bit of deox in there that also attacks the corrosion. And deox is one of those things that you apply it and you wait a little bit because it actually creeps underneath the corrosion and protects the metal. That's the cool part about it. So those are all things that I have switched to using and I have not had problems. So with that, I will. I'm going to call it because this is more just going back and forth. I'm not going to be able to sit here. I'm going to go over there, grab cleaners, and so it's nothing much for to show you there. But we got the caps replaced. You saw how big the other ones were. The new ones look so much nicer. Axle caps. That's a kit I'm going to be putting together for Victory Glass as well. So if you're working on one of these, look for that in the next couple months. So. With that all said, thank you everybody for tuning in and chatting. It was nice seeing you, CW Graham. Nice seeing you, CNK and Barricade. I'm still continue trying to do these from time to time, and when I'm working on the bench, if it's something worth showing you guys, I'll show you. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Keep the music playing and keep on working on your pins and video games. Have a good one.